Okay, welcome boys and girls to our first video experience. We are teaching you lesson 4.6 today, which is all about zero exponents and negative exponents. So we're going to start off with our rules for zero exponents if we have an exponent of 0. So our rules say if we have x, any number x, any variable raised to the 0th power, the answer is always 1. Okay, very simple rule. Okay, so we're going to go through a few examples, just kind of look at this rule. So if we have an easy example, 5 raised to the 0th power, okay, 5 is a number, raised to the 0th power, we look at our rule, the answer is 1. Okay, if we get a little bit more complicated, if we take negative 723, we raise to the 0th power, it really doesn't matter what number's here, if it's raised to the 0th power, the answer is 1. And it can be anything. If I take a smiley face and I raise it to the 0th power, the answer is still 1. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Anything that's raised to the 0th power just becomes 1. There are some cases we have to look at though. Okay, if I were to take this, 3x in parentheses and raise it to the 0th power, or if I were to take this, 3x to the 0th power, they do have different answers. 3x to the 0th power implies that everything in the parentheses is raised to the 0th power, and so anything raised to the 0th power is 1. Where if we have 3x to the 0th power, if we look, only the x is being raised to the 0th power, and the 3 is not being raised to the 0th power. It actually has an imaginary power of 1. So I could say that's 3 to the first times x to the 0th. So x to the 0th is 1, where 3 stays as a 3, so the answer is just 3. Okay, so I really want to make sure you see the difference between numbers 4 and 5. So those are our rules for negative exponents, or for zero exponents. Now we're going to move on to negative exponents. So negative exponents. We're going to go through our rules first, and then we're going to move on to a few example problems. So our rules for negative exponents says if I have any base raised to any negative exponent, it's going to become 1 over that base raised to the positive exponent. So you notice how the negative exponent goes to the bottom of the fraction, okay, or the opposite side of the fraction, and becomes a positive number. Okay, this will make a little bit more sense when we go through a few examples, I hope. Okay, so let's start off. If we have x raised to the negative 2nd power, okay, once again we have a negative exponent, so if we have a negative exponent, it's going to go to the bottom of the fraction, or the opposite side of the fraction, and become positive. So x to the negative 2nd is going to become 1 over x to the positive 2nd. Okay, same thing if I have, let's make my variable y this time, y to the negative 7th is going to become 1 over y to the positive 7th. So the negative exponent goes to the opposite side of the fraction and becomes positive, or it goes to the denominator. Okay, we're going to go through some harder cases. Okay, let's say we have some positive values and some negative values. So let's say I have c to the 7th and d to the negative 2nd. Okay, we're not just going to automatically put everything to the bottom, we're only going to put the numbers that have a negative exponent there. So we can see the c to the 7th, we don't have to worry about this rule because it already has a positive exponent. But the d to the negative 2nd, that one does have a negative exponent, so that one's going to go to the opposite side of the fraction. So the c to the 7th, he's going to stay where he's at. And the d to the negative 2nd, that has a negative exponent, so he's going to go to the bottom and become positive. So that's going to become c to the 7th over d squared. Okay, last example for today. We're going to kind of combine everything we've talked about. We're going to look at the example 5x to the 7th, y to the negative 3rd, z to the 0th power. Okay, so we're going to look at all those values, and we're going to see what we're going to do with each of them individually. There are 4 parts. There's a 5, and x to the 7th, y to the negative 3rd, and z to the 0th. Okay? The first 2 have nothing on them. Okay, this is a 5 to the 1st power. He's just going to stay as 5 to the 1st power. The x to the 7th, that is a positive exponent, so he's going to stay where he's at. This y has a negative exponent. We see that exponent's negative, so we have to follow our rules for negative exponents, and he's going to go to the bottom of the fraction. So that's going to become y to the third. And then the last thing we have to look at is the z to the 0th. Oh, we got to go back to our first rule that says anything raised to the 0th power just becomes 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make him 1 on the top. Okay, so I just put times 1. And really, you can see when you multiply by 1, it doesn't change the problem, so it's just going to be 5x to the 7th over y to the third. That kind of goes through all the rules that we've had for both positive, for negative exponents and 0 exponents. Okay, to prove to us that you've watched this video, you're watching this on a Monday night, and it happens to be a Bears versus Packers Monday night. So in your notes, right underneath this, all you have to write is what the football game is today. So you're just going to write a quick Bears versus Packers. Hopefully we're all watching a Bears victory tonight. Some of us are not so confident. Thank you for watching our first video. This has been a Bert Net Schramm production.